welcome, guys. First of all, to this live recording, and I absolutely appreciate the time that you've given for this. So, I would initially want both you and Michael to give an introduction for yourselves, and then we can talk about Cube Huddle and what F5 is.
Sure. Should we go in alphabetical order?
Yeah, exactly. Anything works.
Okay, I'll go first. So my name is Boo Lam. I am a community evangelist with F5, and in particular, I actually work on a team called Dev Central, which is F5's technical user community. So within there, I work with engagement with our user community, whether that's actually live streaming, podcasting, making videos to engage the community, to educate the community. So that's what I've been doing at F5 for the last 2 years. However, I've been at F5 for almost 12 years at this point. So previously, I was actually a solutions engineer with F5 based in Vancouver, Canada.
Awesome,
Cool.
Michael. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Michael O'Leary. I've been with F5 for 5 years now. I'm a solutions architect, so I talk about all of F5's solutions. But in particular, I tend to focus on Kubernetes and how we can integrate with existing Kubernetes clusters in both sort of legacy ways, so integrating legacy applications with Kubernetes, and in sort of more modern ways where we have modern platforms to run Kubernetes on a global sort of platform. Um, so Also pretty technical. I won't hold the marketing title against you, Boo, but nice to be here.
Great, great. So a little bit about me, as you've all already heard about what Boo and Michael does at 5F5. So my day job is at evmugs.com. I am a developer advocate over there. And besides that, I'm super invested and super, pumped up about organizing this event, which is called Cube Huddle. So a little bit about Cube Huddle. Cube Huddle is a community conference, and we are doing this conference around DevOps, Kubernetes, edge computing, and even the empathy side of tech, right? So, and on this particular occasion, we have been humbly supported by F5 Networks, and we proudly call them our silver sponsor. And we are also pleased to have both Boo and Michael come and join us and share about what they do at F5 and what F5 is and what F5 is trying to do in the world out there. So let's dive into the discussion. I have like a bunch of questions. I'd like to just run through them. So let's start. So, you know, I would just like to say and ask probably that can you tell us a little bit about what F5 Networks is and what the company does in the tech industry? And what are some of the biggest trends and changes you have seen in the industry over the past year or so?
Sure. Would you like me to take that one, Boo?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. Well, F5 has been around for over 2 decades. So in the legacy or traditional landscape, we are often deploying a hardware or a software appliance inside a data center. It sits inside the network, and traffic will traverse an appliance where we can apply load balancing, TLS termination, WAF firewall rules, authentication policies, all these sorts of things. And then in the last sort of 10 years, as we've been focusing more and more on security and cloud, we focused on delivering cloud services. So those can be services that are delivered as SaaS. So think things like DNS or things like hosted WAF. And more recently, a hybrid world where you can have services run on-prem but consume them as SaaS. So I think one of the trends that I've seen, apart from obviously industry-wide adoption of Kubernetes, is this realization that we're going to be in a hybrid indefinite world. And that means that we're going to have some workloads that are living on-prem, some workloads that are living in the cloud, some workloads that are more cloud native than others. And so stitching those workloads together is a really interesting task that I'm enjoying.
Yeah, I would agree. To echo on that point, Michael, like maybe 5 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, actually, we would ask customers, "Hey, are you doing anything in cloud?" And then you get the answer of, "Oh, hey, we're sort of playing with it." Some customers that were born in the cloud, they were off and running, but we had a lot of customers who were just kind of dabbling with it. And then all of a sudden, it was just like everybody piled on. I think Office 365 was one of those like gatekeepers that once everybody got on top of that, they're like, okay, I'm comfortable over with cloud. I'm going to move everything over. And then, as Michael, you were saying, we've seen these customers either repatriate applications and say, oh, this is actually costing a lot. And you know what? It didn't actually reduce our data center. We actually still have this data center and we're going to make use of it now. So let's bring some of those apps back into this data center that we're still paying for, or they find other ways, other operating models. So we're entering this period where we have to adapt and be able to just deliver apps anywhere, regardless of the form factor and regardless of the physical location.
Great, great. I think that was a, really a perfect intro to what F5 really does. So how does F5 network stay on top of these trends and stay ahead of the competition?
Would you like me to take a step at that one also, Boo?
Sure. I got some comments too, but yeah, you'll go for it.
Well, I want to say them just in case we have the same comments.
Yeah, go for it.
So one of the things we do is we poll our 2,000 largest customers every year, and they tell us what's going on in their large organizations. And we produce a report called the State of Application Services Report. So that's one way that we get our finger on the pulse with what's actually happening. And of course, we watch industry trends, and we have many, many customers. So we do see these things. We talk about them a lot, and there's a lot of sort of, in the field, a lot of engineers teaching each other what's going on with their customers. Boo?
Yeah, that's a great point. That the SOAS report, as we would abbreviate that, is a huge report for us. A lot of research goes into that. Our office of the CTO actually is involved with that. They do a lot of work on getting that out. And we also have things like customer advisory boards that tell us like directly, hey, we are a huge consumer of your product and we're consumers of other products as well. And these are the things that we're seeing out there. And these are the things that are moving our business forward. I think F5 has the luxury perhaps and advantage that we will definitely leverage in that we have all these huge customers that are already using our product. They want to stay with us. They have great relationships with us. They like what they already have from us, but they want to push us to move a little bit further ahead as well. So they tell us exactly what they're up to, what they're exploring with, and we'll do that alongside of them, and we'll make the investment to accommodate for or build the products that they need, and that all trickles down as well. Everybody benefits when we can service large customers. We find out how to serve them best, and then we take those learnings and we can apply them across the board for our customers.
All right. So since we did come to the point of customers, right? So how does F5 Networks, help its customers address these challenges and achieve these goals?
I can start on this one, Michael, if you want to. If we want to take turns, I feel bad that you're starting on all of them. So I would say this: we have seen how customers want to move, and we have adapted to how customers want to move, and that's really evident when we made the acquisition of NGINX. And we could see, okay, we are serving customers with monolithic applications really well in the NetOps space with Big IP, and we're coming at it from that angle, but realizing that customers are deploying applications in other form factors. And we went out and to help with that and to fill that need, we made an acquisition of NGINX, and now we can serve customers with microservice applications and in a different form factor that's a lot more palatable for that app dev type customer. And then on the same token, or in the same vein of looking to accommodate what our customers are doing and how they're building their applications, is the acquisition that we made of Volterra a couple of years ago, and that turned into our F5 distributed cloud or F5 distributed cloud services platform. And that allows us to service customers globally through cloud without having them necessarily have to deploy big IPs everywhere, deploy NGINX everywhere. Instead, they can consume our services in a SaaS model, and they can use hardware on site potentially. They can use our software on site potentially. They can lace in all of their public cloud as well, and still serve and still provide all of these layer 4 through 7 services in a really nice way. So we feel that we have this product set at this point that serves customers regardless of their form factor and regardless of where their applications are. Anything you want to add to that, Michael?
You put it really well. We meet customers where they want to be. And I think one of the changes that I've seen over the years is a move away from a fairly traditional release cycle where we have an appliance and we might have an upgrade release cycle that typically when network operations type folks will upgrade appliances, they will schedule outages and they will have a maintenance window and they'll upgrade an appliance towards a much more iterative and agile development. So we're constantly feeding back to product management what customers want. The question was how do we service customers and how do we give them what they want? And one of the things that I've noticed over the last couple of years is that we're doing that much more quickly by feeding back to product management. And product management can then release software. And when you're consuming it as SaaS, you can have much quicker releases. So that's something that you are enabled for as a company when you have SaaS and when you have a platform upon which your other services are built, and importantly, and of course, very relevant for kubectl, when you use Kubernetes as an underlying technology.
Great that you actually raised this entire point of product management. A lot of budding students and a lot of professionals starting out in their career, they do want to get into this space and understand how all of this entire domain works in this particular case. And you also gave a very good purview of how it works in the field of SaaS as well. So I feel this answer can actually help them additionally. So, since we were talking about applications as well, I would like to ask you the questions. What are some of the biggest challenges that organizations face when it comes to application delivery and security?
Sure. So I can take a stab at that one if you like, Boo, and then maybe
Yep.
we can alternate. So some of the biggest challenges that big organizations face when it comes to application delivery and security, I think that the multi-cloud challenge is a big one. I talked earlier about the State of Application Services report. One of the things that we found a couple of years ago is that over 90% of our customers are running in multiple public clouds. So we're talking Azure, AWS, Google, other public clouds, and of course on-prem. So that multi-cloud challenge is a big one. Stitching together multiple networks is not very easy, as well as one thing I personally see all the time, a gap or a separation of concerns between DevOps folks, network folks, and developers. So one platform where multiple teams can do what they want and sort of be governed is something that I think helps approach that problem for large organizations. Obviously, security is a big deal, and skills across the organization, and again, relevant for kubectl, Kubernetes skills are in high demand in the industry. So I think those are some of the things that I see. Boo?
Yeah, I would even add to that point, and maybe that's one of the underlying points that you had there is technical debt. So people that have, okay, we're making these migrations into different clouds, or we're adapting to different clouds because other teams can go and they can just start creating applications, and then they've finished it, and then they have to hand it over, or they decide to hand it over to the ops team and say, oh, we've made this thing, now you take it and manage it. And then ops is like, oh, wow, well, we didn't have anything to do with the architecture. We didn't tell you what IP addresses you should use. We weren't involved in the security policies being stood up for this. And now we've inherited this thing from you. And so it's immediate technical debt there. And not only that, but they have all the technical debt from their history of their applications from previous. And so now we actually have an opportunity, at least what we see with our platform, to be able to swallow all of these applications in. And as we do that, we can clean up that technical debt, or at least we can buy people time so that, okay, we can get that application delivered. And below that, we can take our time to clean up some of that technical debt. Maybe that IP addressing thing is a problem. Okay, let's fix the IP overlap. We have some ability to mask that and get that connectivity up and running. And then in the meantime, we'll start to slowly fix up the the technical debt there that was adopted. But at least we can move the business forward quickly and get on with it and get that application up and running. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that we're overcoming there.
All right, all right. So, you know, we spoke about like trends, right? The trends in the industry. Michael also mentioned about the multi-cloud integration as well. So, my next question is kind of centered around trends. So, what are some of the trends you are seeing in the application delivery and the security space right now? And how are you at F5 try to integrate the entire trend into your ecosystem and get the workaround?
Okay, cool. That's a pretty broad question, so I'll take a stab at it. So what are the trends that I'm seeing in the industry? I think one of the things that I'm seeing is, like we talked about, multiple clouds already. I'm obviously seeing a lot of Kubernetes in the industry, and that's why we'll be speaking at Kube Huddle. So integration with existing Kubernetes clusters is one. What I'm personally seeing is cluster sprawl. So I'm seeing a lot of Kubernetes clusters existing in large organizations. So some level of control across multiple clusters, I think, is going to become a little bit of a focus, at least for me, in the next few months. And then integrating, so I talked a little bit about a skills gap before. I've got some customers where some apps are cloud native and they're running in Kubernetes, maybe they're in the public cloud, and then other applications which might still be on-prem and unable to move because the development team is unable or the technology is just not cloud native. And so it belongs on-prem. So when I talked about stitching those workloads together, I think that's a trend that I'm seeing. Other than that, we are seeing customers that want to consolidate. So there's also a sprawl of tools and vendor options out there. So one trend is to consolidate the tools and the vendors that you use. Another trend would be a trend towards SaaS or consumption models where possible. So in the past, Office 365 was a good one. I think Boo brought that one up earlier. It makes a lot of sense to move to Office 365 because a lot of those services like email are no longer specialized. You don't really need to run them on-prem. They're somewhat commoditized and you can run them in the cloud, and O365 is a good example. But there's plenty of other things that can be run as SaaS that even just a couple of years ago you would have run on-prem yourself. So the move to SaaS and outsourcing is a trend also. That's all that comes to mind for me, Boo.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have anything to add to that one. I think you covered it, so I'll leave it there.
Thanks for addressing that, Michael. So, can you talk about some recent innovations or product development which is happening at F5?
Oh, I would tell you, but I have to kill you. That's a joke. Recent product developments. I have to admit I wasn't quite prepared for this question. Boo, do you have any answer?
Yeah, one of the things that I think folks can look out for, and gosh, I gotta look this up now. There's one thing that has been interesting is the whole idea of XPUs or IPUs, and this is basically ARM compute on a card and being able to offload certain functions onto cards. And I just thought this was the most amazing thing because now you can take specialty cards and basically run a server on a card on a server. And so think of the possibilities of, say, something like DDoS mitigation. And so you can take, instead of having an entire network appliance being dedicated with chips on board, being dedicated to serve out doing DDoS mitigation, instead you can actually offload that to a card, your network adapter, plug it in, and that card actually does the DDoS mitigation, and then that server can continue to do what it's doing. So I think this is like akin to hypercompute infrastructure, I believe, like a Nutanix, right? Like where they kind of realized, okay, we have SANs and we have servers and compute, what if we just like jammed a whole bunch of hard drives into that server and then just made a virtual SAN out of all of this infrastructure that we already have there? We've already got the space on there. So what if we turned the entire server infrastructure also into this big L4 through 7 service as well, and be able to offload all that without necessarily having to provision a whole bunch of specialized hardware for that? So F5 has involvement in a project. I got to look this up now. I think it's like the Open Compute project. You'll have to just give me 1 second here to pick this up. It is Open Programmable Infrastructure Project. So F5 is actually the lead for that, and our office of the CTO has a number of folks that are actually on that standards board. We're on that board along with Red Hat, I believe NVIDIA, Intel, people that are making the IPUs and the DPUs. And then what this project is we're building a layer in between to abstract that. The problem is that, okay, we build a driver for it, and then something changes, and then you have to rebuild the driver for every single iteration of this card and test it with every single operating system. So instead, if we could put a layer in between and just build towards that layer, and then each of the card manufacturers just builds towards that layer from the bottom side as well, we should be able to advance the industry. But this is something that, F5 started. I mean, it benefits us a lot, but it also benefits the entire industry. Because we'll be able to, everybody's going to be able to take advantage of this and develop on this. So this is one of the things I'm bullish on going forward, that, I think you'll see a lot of innovation from F5 there.
I believe so. I just want to keep looking and just keep hoping. So, how does F5 networks work with customers to develop customized solutions? I'd like to ask you to touch upon that, because I'm personally very interested on that.
Well, I could take a short stab at this. We have a couple different things that we can do in that. Both the Big IP platform and the NGINX platform are heavily customizable platforms. Like, they both have languages that you can program and alter the functionality of it. And we've seen customers develop fantastic products that we actually end up possibly turning into features on the Big IP. But a lot of that is like born from the field, like folks like Michael and folks like other solution architects and solutions engineers who know the customer use case really well, and they can combine that with their ability to create these solutions out of the programming languages. A lot of that, can help adapt customers and create something out of nothing.
Awesome, to hear that. So, what are some of the benefits of using F5 over other options? This is a much needed question, so you better answer.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll take a stab at that one. So, what are the benefits of using F5 over other solutions? One of them, we mentioned the word multi-cloud a couple of times. So we have this multi-cloud world, and one of the challenges for a large organization is having a consistent security posture across multiple disparate environments, and having the same platform or vendor in multiple environments allows you to have that consistent approach to security. So that's one reason. Another reason is just the enterprise level feature set that you get with F5, right? We're an enterprise level company. So most of the Fortune 100, for example, use F5. So it's certainly a very in-depth and feature-rich product suite.
Well, and what I would add is that, we've gone over this already, but we can meet the customer wherever they are, regardless of the type of application, regardless of how they want to consume it. You want to consume it in software? Great. You want to buy an appliance? You want to buy a box? Great. You want a SaaS service? Great. You're in the public cloud? Great. Your containers? Great. Doesn't matter. We'll do whatever anybody wants to architect. We can architect against that. If you were, when you asked directly, how does that compare to our competition? Our competition usually is focused on one of those things, one, or maybe they have something off to the side that they focus on as well. And so if you were to ask them and they would say, okay, you would ask them, how do you architect against this? They will give you one or maybe two answers and say, this is the best way to do it. Instead, when you talk to F5, we're going to say, let's listen to how you want to do it. We might have some recommendations for you, but at the end of the day, however you're set on building something, because there's other advantages to it. Obviously, F5 is not the only thing in the environment, but we have to take into account everything. F5 can adapt to all that stuff. So there's no reason to say you must do things in this way because that's the way we sell it. It's a huge benefit when we can say, well, we could sell it to any sort of way that you want to build it. So here's some Lego blocks and let's just build what you want, what you're thinking of.
Great, great. What advice would you actually give to the organizations who are looking to improve their application delivery and security practices?
Talk to Michael.
That's a great question. One of the things that I think is present in all successful projects is a planned and disciplined approach. So once in a while, things come up that you need to deal with, and all of us fight fires a little bit within our day. But if you can take a planned and disciplined approach, then you can plan out how you want to architect your solutions. So I think that'd be one piece of advice. We talked about what are some of the challenges that organizations see, and we know that skills shortages are one of them. So we want to keep that in mind when we plan for moving to the cloud, right? Which is a common thing that people are doing, or moving back from the cloud, or probably if you look at what the trends are in the marketplace, you're probably going to be living in a hybrid world indefinitely. So we want to plan for having skill sets with products that will be able to meet you where you are, sort of like what Boo said earlier. So products like F5 that can run on-prem, they can run in software and hardware, hypervisors, containers, meet you where you are and approach that hybrid indefinite world in a long-term way. That'd be my advice, I think. Do you have any other, Boo?
I concur. I've gone through, one of our colleagues, Mark Menger, draws out this wonderful diagram of how you should think about your application your application estate, he calls it. And so organizing things from a management and ops layer, a global services tier, a site services tier, an application services tier. And once you've kind of mapped all that out and you figure out, oh, okay, I have all these tools in play, if I can just start placing them into the right tiers for my application, at least I've rationalized everything I have. It's not a matter of, hey, I bought this thing because the sales guy sold it to me, and where do I put this, or how does it fit in everything? If we can just start to realize, okay, if I just slot these things in here, rationalize what I have, does everything play nice together, what can I get rid of, and then start focusing on, now let's peel back that technical debt I talked about, and let's pull off that technical debt at that point. And I think that's kind of the what Michael was alluding to there at the beginning, was having some organization around your tools.
Great, great. No, right now it kind of brings me to asking you this question, whose answer I probably know, but I would still ask you to answer. That is, how does F5 Networks actually approach corporate social responsibility and giving back to the community?
That's a great question. So there's a number of programs. I'm sure I'm not going to remember them all off the top of my head, but we have a couple that come to mind. So in no particular order, we do have a giving program internally. So when you talk about corporate or social responsibility, the company does make donations and match donations for employees that give to charities. We've also done some things, for example, during COVID, when the pandemic set down upon all of us a couple of years ago. F5 was very generous in some initiatives they made, but the details of those right now I don't recall. A couple of other things that I know they run an initiative, I think it's called Girls Who Code, and it's for young women to get them into sciences and tech. And we have a number of sort of programs to help young people get into technology. We have some things for employees. For example, it's popular to see on LinkedIn wellness weekends. So F5's very much committed to their employees. You hear the word human first a lot at F5, and it's because they really do put their employees first and take a human first approach to things. So I know I'm talking about employees as opposed to sort of corporate and social responsibility, but the mental well-being of employees and others generally is very important to F5. That's what comes to mind off the top of my head. Are you able to think of any more, Boo?
Yeah, I think you covered a good lot of it. We have a number of employee inclusion groups, I guess I should mention as well. So, depending on there might be certain things that you gravitate towards. Um, Depending on if you're maybe a veteran is one that I'm thinking of as well. And that group specifically, they go out and they can actually they execute on community things, which has been really cool. So they execute on volunteerism as a group, and they execute on actually creating programs around hiring veterans who have finished their term serving and want to transition their career, and they actually help them out if they were in a field that actually translates to something that can be applicable to F5. They actually help them out with a program there as well. So I've seen some really cool things happen at F5.
This is probably a question that we could answer all day long for you, Barsha. So there's a couple of employee inclusion groups for people of color and also for people of different nationalities. I happen to be one, right? I work in the USA, but I wasn't born here. So there's a couple of inclusion groups for people to support people in that way. And then actually in an ad hoc sense, a couple of things have happened over the past couple of years, and F5 has reached out to employees to let us know that they have our backs. So a couple of those have been sort of large social changes where medical care might be available in some states and not others, and F5 have let their employees know that F5 will be there for their employees if they're unable to receive the sorts of care that they're going to need. And I remember around voting rights, I want to say that there was some efforts or some initiatives to encourage people to vote when elections happen. So there's generally speaking always an effort at F5 to take a human first approach to our lives and realize that there's more than just technology going on here.
I think this is the thing I think everybody wants to hear. So did I. And to be very honest, my next question was about inclusivity and diversity, but I'm just going to skip that question. And I'm going to come straight to this root question, which is what are the values and the morals that you live by at F5?
It's funny because my screensaver, you can't see it, right? But it's a corporate sort of very pretty image, and so I like to use it as like my desktop background. So it's a little F5 logo, and then right next to it, it says, first and foremost, we do the right thing. And I like to think that that's something that I can live by. Every time I have something come up and I think, what shall I do? I remember, first and foremost, we do the right thing. So does that answer your question? A motto that you live by?
It does. It certainly does, I think. Because I don't think so. It requires an elaborate explanation. It just requires like a spot on understanding of what values and morals that you live by. So it's fine. So let's talk about like. Certain partnerships and collaborations that probably have happened with you F5 that you have been most proud of, or you're very grateful that such things really happened, and then we can jump over on Cube Huddle and talk about this partnership.
Sure. So the question was certain partnerships that I'm most proud of, or we are most proud of in our careers at F5. Is that the question?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
You know what's been really personally rewarding for me? I have been able to coach and shepherd and otherwise corral a bunch of colleagues through some certifications recently, and that's been really rewarding. So when you talk about partnerships, I'm talking about at the personal level, where I've seen people be a little bit hesitant to take on a new technology, and then after sort of learning about this technology, they realize this isn't so hard. It's mostly a challenge of new terms or maybe a couple of new concepts, but I can put it into perspective based on what I already know. And so I've seen some of my colleagues come a long way and then become experts in a technology that maybe they didn't know 6 months ago. And that's been really rewarding for me. Does that count as a partnership, or are you talking about something else?
No, this kind of serves absolutely fine. Like, however you look at collaboration and partnership is like a very individualistic perspective. And I just wanted to know that. Or I just also wanted to know, like, as an organization, what were the partnerships that F5 have been also most proud of, which I think you kind of answered it, because I think it kind of vests and depends and falls back on what each team member at F5 feels like. I think that individualistic understanding of partnerships and collaborations are super important. I would like to ask you, and actually want to know from you, like, could you share with us some sort of like case studies or success stories that happened at F5 that you'd like to celebrate or going to share with us?
I'm going to scratch my head for a minute on that one. Boo, do you have anything that you're particularly proud of in terms of case studies or other successes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am gonna go look at our case studies right now. I mean, the one case study that just pops into mind though is actually one of my former customers, and so this is a customer. This is actually on our customer case studies site if you were to go check it out, and it's a company called Blue Shore Financial. And I'm most proud of this one because this is a customer that I have actually known since before joining F5. And I mentioned before that I've been at F5 for 12 years. So I've actually known this particular customer for upwards of 15 or 16 years at this point. And it's super cool to be able to continue to work with a group of folks for a decade and a half and have this great relationship with them and build this trust with them and go to them and say, hey, we've got this new solution. I know you have many of our solutions, but we've got this new solution called distributed cloud, and we have this security solution that I think is going to fix a problem for you. And timing was right. They had a problem to fix, and then we were able to go in there and help them with that problem. And we turned that into a case study, and we got a video done with them, which I got to go check out. So what they ended up doing, just like how we've talked about, is that customers, they want the flexibility to deploy solutions in however they want. They were not a customer who was ready to bring on their own web application firewall to protect their applications, but they needed a web application firewall. But there's a skills shortage. They have some great folks on staff. However, those folks can't do everything and be experts at everything. And so their management said, you know what, we're going to help out here. We're going to get you into a solution that is going to save you some of that hassle there, and you're going to manage the console with some training as opposed to having to become a web application firewall expert. And so they went ahead and they did that, and they've been really successful with it. They were able to get their application launched on time as opposed to waiting around to do a whole huge project to get a web application firewall deployed. And that's one that I'm particularly proud of because that's one that happened just before I moved over into my role now on Dev Central, and we finished off with that project.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Boo. So, and now I would like to come back to this, roundabout and ask you about this entire Cube Huddle and F5 collaboration that has happened, because I'm very happy because I think I have known both of you before this collaboration happened through LinkedIn and all. So, would just like to ask you, um, why this partnership happened? What did you see in this partnership that you wanted to just move ahead with?
Sure, I can take a shot at that if you like. So at F5, we obviously believe in community. We also serve enterprise level customers. And personally, I am looking for the Kubernetes community And when I go to KubeCon, there's tens of thousands of people there. And we have local meetups. I live in Boston, we have a local meetup, and there's a handful of people, but there's not a whole lot in the middle. So when I heard about Kube Huddle, I was really excited. Something in the Northeast, something in North America, something that's a little smaller than KubeCon, but bigger than your average meetup. So I was pretty excited about that. When I heard about it, we talked to some folks internally at F5, and we said, that's great, we'd love to sponsor this event. So that's how the sponsoring came about. We'll also be presenting at Kube Huddle because we have a hosted Kubernetes platform, so we can give a fantastic technical talk on Kubernetes, specifically around technical topics, right, as opposed to sort of the sympathy or empathy side of technology. So that's how this particular sponsorship happened with Kube Huddle. But generally speaking, we do sponsor events. DevOps Days is a good example, right? DevOps Days happens in multiple cities around the country, and F5's usually there with a booth and hopefully doing a presentation. And other sort of events that happen in the industry. There's many events, as you can imagine. So we're usually there all the way from the big events like AWS reInvent down to sort of small local regional events. We also hold user groups for our customers, and those are sort of F5 specific user groups. But generally, we like to be part of the communities at all levels.
Awesome, and I'm going to take this time to thank you to support this initiative of ours, because I think it's been quite a while that certain community events in the North American region actually happened. So honestly, people are super excited, and as organizers we are very excited about this sort of a community event happening in Toronto here, because I think Cube Huddle, first happened in Edinburgh, Scotland, and it was done by David. And this time we have an amazing team, which is led by Mr. Marino Vijay from Solo.io. He's a platform advocate over there. And I think under his awesome lead and everything, we have been able to achieve so much. And I think a big thanks actually go to FI for being there with us and for supporting this entire thing. Now, I was actually hoping, what are the different talks that both Boo and Mike, like you, are looking forward to give at Cube Huddle? What are the kind of workshops you're actually looking forward to giving?
Well, I can give you a sneak preview if you like. I'm developing a new talk track actually, specifically for this conference. And it's actually based on a customer use case. So I had a customer come to me and say, hey, we have this distributed stateful app, runs inside Kubernetes, but it's a little bit of a pain for us to expose this application securely across our network to the correct hosts on our network. And so that's a middleware style application where other applications are reaching out to this first application, and we want to expose that application. So how does that have anything to do with Kubernetes? Well, so far, nothing, right? Everything I've talked about could be VMs, it could be hardware. But in their case, this application runs in Kubernetes. So we have a platform, right? We've talked about it. It's F5 Distributed Cloud. It can integrate with existing Kubernetes clusters. So I can serve traffic to existing Kubernetes clusters with the application delivery features that you've come to expect. So load balancing, TLS termination, WAF, bot detection, and fraud prevention, and all these other sort of services that I want to apply to my traffic as it's approaching my application. So it can integrate with existing Kubernetes clusters, but it can also host Kubernetes workloads itself. So depending on how long you let me talk for, I will talk about different approaches to that problem. I've also got thrown my hat in the ring, so to speak, in response to your call for speakers, and I have offered to talk about community building. So I mentioned before, I run the Boston Kubernetes meetup, and that was dormant over COVID, and then I took it over, and the community is getting back on its feet, and we're seeing that community grow again. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that to inspire anyone else that might be in a different city that wants to run their own Kubernetes meetup. And then lastly, I offered a talk on CKA certification. So at F5, we've had a couple of programs where we've taken a handful of engineers who might be beginners in Kubernetes or maybe sort of intermediate level, and we've got together as a group of peers and we've formed a study group and we've helped each other along the way. And over a period of weeks, we have studied for the Certified Kubernetes exam, which is proctored by the Linux Foundation, and passed. So we've got a bunch of engineers now CKA certified, and sort of reskilling your workforce is not an easy task, but it is pretty important if you want to compete in the modern sort of cloud native modern apps workspace. So I think that's a pretty interesting topic, and I wanted to give some tips about what's worked and what hasn't, and what I plan to do in the future with those efforts.
Awesome, and I think we are ever more than excited to hear that, because I think these are some of the much needed, guides and topics that a lot of budding engineers and people getting into the cloud native space kind of looks in. So you are basically just filling the need in a nutshell. So yeah, so for a conclusion, I would like to ask you, what are the attendees, the participants, and anybody who is just looking forward to drop by at the Cube Huddle conference at MTCC? What can they be expecting from F5?
Well, I've done a lot of talking, so I'd like to leave this one to Boo.
Yeah, I think they're going to see a side of F5 that they might not have expected. If we consider maybe a typical attendee for something like KubeCon and KubeHuddle, they might be familiar with our NGINX solutions and less familiar with our Big IP solutions. They might think of Big IP as the dinosaur that the NetOps folks take care of, but they're going to see that Big IP has solutions around Kubernetes and NGINX. They might already be familiar, but we'll get them familiar with the NGINX solutions around Kubernetes. And then they'll realize that we can also integrate their Kubernetes, or we can provide containers as a service through our distributed cloud platform, and through Michael's talk as well. Learn about how they can deliver their Kubernetes efficiently and solve some problems through that distributed cloud platform as well. So I am really looking forward to, maybe it'll be a surprise for some, but showing them what this F5 looks like now, the F5 of 2023 as opposed to the F5 of the early 2000s. It's a lot different. They may not have seen it before, and I'm looking forward to showing them that.
Awesome. Thank you, Boo, for sharing that. So I would just like to ask you any concluding thoughts that you have, Michael and Boo. I would like to hear that from you. What exactly are you coming to as a conclusion? Personally, anything that you're looking forward to at Cube Huddle as well? Please share with us.
Well, everyone loves Toronto, and Canada's a beautiful country, so we're never going to say no to visiting that city. And we've got fantastic restaurants and a fantastic sort of multicultural scene there, so that'll be a lot of fun. But personally, I think it's engaging with community, and especially as we come out of this pandemic, learning from each other and sharing with each other. It's very much a community feel at these sorts of events, so that's what I'm mostly looking forward to.
Yeah, I would
And
echo the same in that, these, like Michael was saying, you go to a KubeCon, you have tens of thousands of people there, and it's hard to have those conversations with folks because it's so busy. And last year I was able to attend a smaller conference, and I spoke to more people there, even though there was 20 times less people than some of the other conferences that I was going to. And I could have very good chats with folks, and chats with folks that are the actual people that are hands on keyboards, as opposed to the managers who got the ticket to go to the big conference and they're there. And I understand they're learning stuff, and that's fantastic. And they have their own tracks to follow as well. But I like the intimate ones where you get to talk to the people that are hands on keyboards. And like, we were saying, is that both myself and Michael have direct lines back to product management, back to our office of the CTO to feed back the information so that we can serve these customers in the way that they're saying that they need to be served. So I'm really looking forward to just that community and having those conversations.
Thank you so much, Michael and Boo, for being there. And just for a last thought on my side, the thing that you shared, Boo, is that you want to be able to speak with people, right? Because in larger events for 10,000, 12,000, people events, it's kind of very hard to kind of come in and have a one-to-one conversation in a very good place. And that is what you can achieve, a one-to-one conversation with the other person, who is attending the conference in a community conference just like Cube Huddle. And since we all know that cloud native community itself is so inclusive and diverse, that they want to talk about things, that they want to be open about things. So I'll just say that please join us at Cube Huddle at MTCC Toronto in the month of May from 17th to 18th. Join us for a fun-filled event, for an event where you get to speak with the person next to you and have a really really meaningful conversation. So thank you, Boo and Michael, again for coming here and giving your precious time to us. We'll meet soon at Toronto.
Great.
Goodbye.